You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. I got Brad Hunt here with me. This is part 3 of our late season muley/elk hunting content. As you can tell, we're not in a teepee. We're back somewhat in civilization near the house. We basically have been getting our butts kicked, and we just popped out of the woods for a few days after 12 days.
Yeah.
12 days of hunting, and we are going back in a few more days. We're regrouping, and we have another 10 plus day trip ahead of us. We have mule deer tags and elk tags that we still can fill. We got dates ahead, and basically though, we don't really have a lot to report. No. And so we didn't really turn the camera on because the migration hasn't seemed to work for us in our favor. The rut hasn't really kicked in much. It hasn't been that cold, although it's cold enough. I mean, it's not a bad early fall. But yeah, the trip so far has been...
It's been a butt kicker.
It's been frustrating. We're not gonna lie. I mean, we're disappointed. Mm-hmm. But you know what? We've been talking about this for days, because we really only saw a few does on the whole trip. This is not, this happens sometimes. This happens to us, especially on these public land migration hunts. You've seen some of our muley videos where we kill monsters or great bucks. Yep. I wouldn't say monsters. They're not 200 inches, but, from bucks with trash all over them, or 30 inches wide, or
just old, like mature mule deer.
Just mature mule deer. And then you'll see us on some of those earlier videos pass on some deer that were like sweet bucks, and we were just trying to go for something a little bit bigger and a little bit more impressive, and ended up with no bucks at all. But there have been hunts where we've gone out for 10, 12 days, and nothing happened. Yeah. We didn't even see animals to film. And what we generally happens is we come home and we table that content and put it on a hard drive, and there's no video being produced because there's no story to tell.
Yep.
Other than the story of we went on a fancy camping trip.
Exactly. Worked our butts off.
It was a great camping trip. We can talk about gear, we can talk about equipment, but we can't really talk about any degree of hunting success because it didn't happen.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how often that happens to myself, to Ryan, to probably our peers like Randy Newberg, Corey Jacobson, and others. Sometimes that's just the way hunting is.
Yeah.
You go out and you work your butt off, and it's just a bum season. And other times you go out and it's magical. Now, there are certain hunts that are either on or off. Like, you hit it and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, you take an elk hunt, for example.
Yep.
Elk hunts you've been on where it's like, there's bulls around every tree.
Like, this is easy.
And, yep. And then other years where you can't seem to find a bull to save your life.
Or situations happen, like more guys in an area, more pressure.
Same thing with mule deer.
Yep. You throw the migration into there, and it's like, am I hitting it right? Are they going to be there? Are they not going to be there? I mean, there's a lot of factors that play into a lot of that stuff on your success, for sure.
So on this particular hunt, just to give you a solid update, we hunted 12 days. We covered, I don't know how many, hundreds of miles. We climbed thousands and thousands of feet of mountain. We endured cold, frigid temperatures, the elements, freezing cold, snow,
rain.
And the more we didn't find critters, the harder and harder we worked and went after it. And it just turned out that it was just a bum period. It wasn't, maybe the deer didn't migrate. We really don't know. We're going to ask a lot of questions to peers and friends and biologists and try to figure out. But it sounds like a lot of people experience the exact same type of conditions that we have. The rut didn't seem to get fired up for a lot of this muley stuff, and also they didn't seem to migrate on some of these mountain migration units the way that they typically do. So, hey, I mean, that's just hunting. And perhaps next year it's more magical. Now, every day that goes by, the mule deer rut is starting to kick in more and more.
Yeah.
Late season elk, the elk have phases that they're kind of still herded up with the cows, but they're starting to really break off.
Yeah.
And probably these big bulls aren't even with cows anymore. They've gone off into little pockets.
They're kind of starting into what I would call recovery mode.
And they just lay low, don't get seen.
They usually stay pretty close to a water source, a good food source, and they're just laying low.
So we have tags for both. The mule deer situation should only get better and better. And when you're hunting mule deer on public land, over the counter, easy draw type units, which is generally what we try to do, the real blue collar hunts. Sometimes what we're trying to show with the hunts we do is that you can have that magic deer you find if you are willing to put in the days, get fit, hike the far miles, and put in the time. That even the poorest among us, with the least resources, can make it happen through sweat equity and grind and talent and skill. However, these are hard units to capitalize on. And as is proven now, like we've been on 4 or 5 hunts where we just didn't see anything.
Yeah.
After 10 days of hunting. And so, yes, we've shown, I think, through film that it can be done in video and our podcast content, and also that it can't be done sometimes.
Yep.
And that's the nature of...
Like, no matter how hard you try, and
it's out of your hands.
How fit you are and how much time you put in, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of luck.
But the good news is the rut is the great equalizer.
Yeah.
And if you can get on a hunt during prime rut, whatever the species is, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Even on a straight up, public hunt, especially though if you get remote like we do, the odds of you having success, the closer you get to the rut, the better. I mean, it's pretty good.
Your odds
hunt.
just continually go
up. It's
a
really good hunt. Yeah. Like, I don't care what state it is. Arizona, heavily pressured. We've done that many times.
Yep.
It can be epic prime rut. It'll just get awesome. Like, all of a sudden, something magical will happen, even in a high pressure, a difficult type of hunt.
Yep.
All of a sudden, that equalizer comes out and it's magic. So I am excited because we are approaching more and more of the mule deer rut, and that just only increases our odds of success. So Brad and I are going to head out in a few more days and regroup and see if things haven't changed after a week. And I think we're just a few weeks off, or a couple of weeks off from it getting wild out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully we finally get our mule deer this year.
Yep.
So that's the update. I wish it was more glamorous, but it's not.
It's not.
But let's talk about, we've been talking about gear kind of on these discussions because there's not much to talk about when it comes to an epic adventure.
Deer action.
So one of the things that I thought would be interesting to talk about today, and since I have it right here, is our backpack experience, because we both used Stone Glacier 7900 packs on this last trip.
Yep.
Prior to that, I used this Initial Ascent prototype pack in Caribou, Moose, Alaska. You've been using the Everly stock.
The Vapor series, they're 7500. A little bit of modification, so I made like a top lid. They have a fanny pack that can be used as a top lid, but I fitted it, so I have a top lid all the time on my pack.
It's a great pack, and anyway, I want to give you our impressions of contrasting, comparing, and using different backpacks and stuff.
Yep.
One of the things that we both have realized over the years, and I've used every backpack on the market, some for extended periods, and I've used them for the actual hunts, like 10-day expedition hunt, along with having success and packing meat out.
Yeah.
You know, I've used it for archery. I've used it for rifle, you know, and so I've been able to really test and contrast backpacks for quite a long time. And I'm not affiliated with any backpack company.
Right.
So I don't have any sort of
ties to anybody.
Yeah. I do have a commission code with Initial Ascent, as they do direct sales. If you use the code GRITTY at Initial Ascent, you get a discount, and I get a little payment from them for each sale. But there's not huge profit margins on USA made equipment, and Initial Ascent is USA made. There's not big margins there. They make an excellent product, and I get a little bit, but it's not a huge financial boon. But I appreciate Joe and Dennis a lot. They're studs. They're awesome guys, and they've put out a great backpack. So I wanted to talk a little. That's just full disclosure, right? But I've used mostly everything and a top tier level. What I'll say is that each of them have their pros and cons.
There is no like one backpack out there that fits all your needs and accomplishes everything you need in one pack. Like, I will say that there's not one pack out there.
To me, there's not just these packs that are just vastly better than when you're talking about the top tier brands. And I'll qualify that by saying a few. I think Initial Ascent, Stone Glacier, XO, your Everly stock.
Yeah, Stone and Kuiu, I think, would be right there. Be the ones I can think of.
I think Kavaru.
And Kavaru, yes, as well.
You know, so I think you have some really solid packs out there, and I think those are all top tier type packs. I wouldn't put Mystery Ranch in there, not to dog on Mystery Ranch. There's a few I wouldn't put in there for various reasons, overall weight, or they just can't carry heavy loads well, or, you know, a few years ago I wouldn't have put Everly stock in that list. But as they've done some changes, and as you have worked with them and you're using it, now I have to sort of say, yeah, I think they're in there.
Yeah, I mean, we've packed some crazy heavy loads out.
160 pounds of elk meat under that pack. Yep. With no blisters, soreness, all that. No. And so we'll just give you our quick impression right now on sort of what we've been using recently and what we're liking. So the 7900 from Stone Glacier has an excellent bag. Yeah,
I really like the bag design.
I love the bag design.
You got the external pocket that's kind of like your spotter for us, the long lens area.
I like the beaver tail access.
The beaver tail. You have the access from the top, which, you know, whether it's a roll top or the drawstring on the Stone, it's the drawstring.
Yeah, top. It's got the really tall snow.
So you can, as you add gear and weight, you can stack it up. You know, and the Initial's the same way. Stone's or Everly stock's the same way. You kind of can add and compact and expand.
The Everly stock is an aluminum external frame.
Yeah, so it's an aluminum external frame that is on its own. You can add, I mean, dozens of different bags to it. Like I said, I've been running the 7500, their Vapor series. It zips on, which I really, really like, because one thing is one, I can take the bag off really fast and still have all my gear in there. But also, like when you get meat, same thing. I pull the bag off. I have a double buckle system on it. So when I put meat on there, I can use my main straps to suck that meat down tight to the frame and it doesn't move. And then I attach my bag over top of that and I have all my gear. The downside to it is currently right now the bag setup doesn't have, and that's where, you know, talking about the Stone bag.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think the Initial Ascent falls prey to the same deficiency, which is there's some quirkiness in the design. Like they didn't quite get it all ironed out, like a buckle covers.
Didn't like fully, I think it's
like a strap covers a pocket or something.
I think it's a fully, like, using it in the field as you're thinking and designing the pack is part of it. You know, because it's a great idea, but then when you say you have stretch pockets on the outside, kind of like the Vapor, well, as you load all your stuff, the way the Everly stock is those main straps that hold everything tight, they go around like those outside pockets. And so initially, yeah, it's a great idea, but then you can't use your stretch pockets
Sure.
or access them.
Yeah.
The initial scent's kind of the
Right,
same way.
Yeah. Like I said, there's quirkiness to the overall design to where there's a few things where you're like, why did we design it that way? It's sort of a shortcut, or it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's an incomplete
Wasn't
idea.
thought out enough.
Same thing with you don't get that with the stone though. It's kind of like neat. Nothing contradicts itself.
Yep.
Everything is kind of built to perform per function.
Correct.
There's things that still, like the top lid, it's clean and neat, but I don't like the small access and I don't like the shape.
Yeah.
But it looks nice.
And it is functional, but we kind of talk about what the stone lid is like a black hole.
It's not as functional as this.
No.
This is the initial
It gets the job
lid,
done,
which
but
is
it's
so much bigger,
such a short
more accessible.
zipper that it is like a black hole when you're like reaching in there.
You're digging and looking for stuff. It kind of it gets annoying. So I would agree with you on that. Like there's some quirkiness between some of those. I would say, I'm not going to talk about some of the other brands, but they suffer from the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I would say the stone is really clean like that.
Yeah.
And well thought out. But
with your straps
but let's talk about, like, at the end of the day, the biggest thing for me is how it carries under heavy load.
I would say under heavy load, and how particular it is when you're loading it. When it comes to being very cautious and aware, like if I have one heavy thing on this side, I got to make sure to counterbalance it on this side where the weight is put. I would say
I cringe when I see people load backpacks and they load them completely wrong.
Yeah.
Which we should do a podcast here in the near future to talk about that. But I see guys like they just start loading their pack with
all their heavy stuff down on the bottom.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, that's going to kill your shoulders and lower back.
A pack that weighs 50 pounds can feel like 90 pounds when it's loaded poorly.
Yeah.
The weight is not distributed well.
Yep.
I would say at a high level, the stone compared. So you use the Eberly stock and you've used the stone.
Yes.
What was you tell me, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like what was your overall impression?
So right off the bat, because I mean, we were on day one of me using the stone, we were heavy.
We had to carry about 80 pounds up the mountain with water and everything loaded and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
once we got up there, we could drop back to 60, 55.
Yep. I would say this, even in the lower weights of the 50 to 60 pounds, I would say the stone is pretty particular on how you load it. Because say you have a rifle on one side and you pull that rifle off, I noticed it on the later part of the hunt when I was packing the rifle. Wasn't really heavy, but everything was really good, balanced. But as soon as I'd pull that 6.5 pound rifle off, just that 6.5 pounds, it would like throw it off. And so now it's like one side of my back is using more muscle to keep my core straight. So so I noticed with the stone is it's very particular on weight distribution, how it's loaded versus.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I had said that in previous shows where I've talked about this a bit. It's absolutely, weight distribution matters. Like you want it balanced, and you can't get away with it being a little bit too heavy on one side without it causing fatigue.
And obviously I did not, because we weren't successful, I didn't get to pack meat out on it yet. But one thing I noticed is we did get into that 80, closer to 90 pounds. When
we were easy 90.
When we were throwing all our water and stuff. And so, I mean, that's a lot of weight. I
carried 4 bladders.
Same here.
Which is 32
or 33 pounds roughly right in there. And
32 pounds.
Yep. And
just in water.
And then you got,
plus your other load.
23 pounds gear. Or 26 pounds in food, because we had 12 or 13 days.
Stupid heavy to climb in it for about an hour and a half climb.
I would say minimum 90 pounds. So what I noticed, especially when I threw that more weight in there and
we also took turns.
Water,
you're running the camera and I'm carrying a rifle, and then the next time you're carrying a rifle and I'm carrying the big lens and spotter.
Yep.
And when you carry the rifle, it goes on one side. And if you didn't balance the weight, know it.
And then if you do have it balanced, and then you pull that rifle off, and then you're like, oh shoot, I'm 6.5 pounds less on this side, you notice it. And so especially when we threw that heavy water in there and stuff, like if you had it loaded just a little bit too high, you're really top heavy. If you had it loaded just a little bit on one side, your body, your back muscles really noticed it. Versus when I load like my Everly stock, I don't have to be near that particular, like if I pull a rifle off, I don't notice that the rifle is gone. If I add, more water in there, I don't notice that I've got another 20 or 30 pounds of water that's like, obviously you notice the weight, but I don't notice the weight shift in the pack and stuff because it's a lot like the initial. It's a pretty stiff frame.
The stone is a narrow bag, and it's really narrow, and it fits inside your back actually, which is really nice for going through brush and stuff. It doesn't stick out on the sides. It's super narrow, but it stacks back and stacks high. Because the volume has to go somewhere.
Exactly.
Where the initial ascent is super wide. It wraps around your hips and goes way around, and the reason for that is to distribute the weight over your whole hip area. The stone is designed to put the weight right over the small of your back, and to put the weight kind of right there,
kind of through the shoulders and down,
which when loaded properly is a really effective way and comfortable way to carry a load. And the weight, as long as the weight is light toward the bottom, gets a little heavier and up around the middle of your shoulder blades, thoracic area, it gets a little heavier. And then as you go higher, you try to go a little lighter again. And as long as you can get that weight, it carries over the hips, it carries nice over the back, as long as it's not too heavy on one side or the other, and it's not stacked too high with weight up high. It actually carries really efficiently. It's a nice load. But it's easy to throw it off by putting too much weight at the very top, or too much weight at the very bottom.
And what I noticed is there's a pretty fine line of where that weight is. Like if you have it in the middle of the back, or if you put it towards the upper 3/4 of your back, it changes dramatically on the difference of that. And
so you can get good, like I said this before, a lot of times when people like what they know, what they're used to, what they're really familiar with. So there's a lot of people who may be like, I don't like the stone, or I'm so used to the stone, you kind of get intuitive with that, and you're like, how to load it and pack it, and you get a system down. But the point is, it's highly susceptible to weight distribution issues. Like how you pack it and how you load it really is important to optimize the comfort level. And it's got a great design. But when you compare it, like you said, to your Everly stock, it's very different. Because you can really throw on, like, you don't ever get that. It feels like it's going to fall sideways or flop around on your back kind of feel.
And I can get away with stacking some of my weight, which I think carries better a lot of times too, is I can get away with stacking some of my heavier weight even a little higher versus the stone. I can't. Like if you start raising that weight a little bit, like your heaviest items, you're like, oh crap, I'm going over, But I just noticed it's more particular in that area for sure.
Now, what about, like, one of my favorite parts about the stone is when I'm stepping over logs and going through brush and moving along, especially with a moderately weighted pack, like 60 pounds max. Like, what I really like about it is how maneuverable I feel with it on. It's a very comfortable pack for wearing just day in, day out on just with them. Like, let's say you're hunting for 5 days. So instead of 25 pounds of food, 23 pounds of food, you're carrying 10 pounds of food. And you're not packing water. All of a sudden, you got a 50 pound, 60 pound with your rifle and weapons and stuff. Let's say 55 pounds is your hunt setup for a 5-day hunt. It's kind of a nice load and a nice weight for that pack, because you can get through brush, climb over things, and it's really flexible and mobile. Because I have the initial ascent right here, and look, this is a board. That is a board. And it's strapped to your back. And so when I'm carrying that kind of load and I'm going, and it's wide, so if I have my rifle on the side and this on the side, it almost sticks out further than my arm. And so now I'm going through brush and I'm ducking through things, and I try to bend, and it's stiff, and it doesn't flex very well, and it can be annoying. Where the stone is really nice for that.
I would say, like, the Everly stock is not near as stiff as the initial, because, like I said, the initial is basically you're putting a piece of plywood strapped to your back. The Everly stock is close because it has the aluminum frame, but within that aluminum frame, like the webbing and your shoulder harness and your hip belt, they're really held together with the fabric. Mm-hmm. And so you do still have some pliability where you can move a little bit. It's not near as stiff, but the stone is way more maneuverable.
Yeah.
Way more. But
when you get it super heavy, because we even, on one of our trips, we even brought rafts and paddles, you know.
You're adding I was adding another 7 pounds.
Yeah, and then camera gear, like when you really get up there,
we're pushing 100.
So overall, what about? I mean, I noticed we talked about this. You were searching for the fit and the comfort, and the pack was you didn't feel. Bottom line, you preferred your Everly stock.
I did. I told you this like multiple times. I wish I could take the stone bag and put it on my Everly stock frame. And so it's like, I would have my ideal setup right now, you know, because I have what I want in the bag features, but then I have the carrying load and weight distribution and stuff. And I would say the broad spectrum that allows me to not be so particular in how I load that pack. You know, I don't have to be as technical and perfect on all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then I'd have the perfect setup. I would absolutely love it, you know?
Yeah.
Because the Everstock's kind of the same way as the initial. The frame is not as wide as the initial.
Yeah.
But the way that the bag attaches, like that 7500, it pushes more of the weight out and back, not as tall as like the stone goes.
Well, I will say, like, you know, we share the same experience when it comes to the Stone Glacier versus your Everly stock versus my initial Ascent that I've been using primarily.
Yeah.
Some of the other packs out there I haven't used in quite a while, and the Stone was definitely my favorite of them. But then I started using the initial Ascent, and I would say I'm kind of split on the initial Ascent and the Stone. Except for, like I've said, I keep going back to when it's really heavy.
Yeah.
I like the initial Ascent a little bit more, but there's things about the Stone I like better. Yeah. It's sort of like splitting hairs.
It's splitting hairs, and I'm the same way. Like, obviously, I didn't get to pack that 120 pounds or 130 pounds with an animal on the Stone, but I mean, we were getting up to that 100-pound mark, which is no joke.
Yeah.
And what I feel is like, I love how the Stone is set up. I really like how all the straps and their features and stuff in the bag itself. I absolutely love that.
You can't go wrong recommending any of them.
No, not at all. Not at all. Like, you know, at the end of the 13 days with the Stone, it's like, I could use this every day, like, and I would be fine with it.
And the more you use it, the more you'll adjust it and figure out how to master the
system down.
Yeah,
correct.
There are some packs I feel like are really hard to fit, and they take a lot of tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. And one thing about, I feel like the Stone, according to you, the Everly stock, I think that they're kind of like, they throw on and you can make a few adjustments and they just fit.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones I feel like you got to really tweak. You almost have to have someone like help you get it to work. And but I'll say, like, I'm looking forward to going back to my initial Ascent on this next trip and again freshly comparing it.
Same here.
To the Stone that I just used. And I got to tell you, like, when I threw this on earlier, you know, when this is heavy, this pack, yes, it is stiff when it's not loaded. But we do 10 and 12 day hunts. We talked about the loads already. We'll talk about it on some future podcasts that are coming out where we really get into how much is our food, how much is our gun, our rifle, you know, all the pieces, the water. And what I'm finding is we carry such heavy stuff that these external load packs, the
external frame
kind of setup is almost, I mean, it's very ideal.
No, I'll say this, like, again, it's knowing the system, learning the system, how to load it, everything like that. With the current Everly stock with that F1 mainframe, it has the shelf on the bottom, like the meat shelf or whatever.
Which I'd like to get rid of.
And that's in the works to get rid of. But
I don't need that shelf.
Well, and the thing is, the problem with it, if you are out there using the Everly stock mainframe, even with meat, I take an elk hind quarter, which is not small.
Mm-hmm.
I lift that sucker up like 4 to 6 inches or more above that shelf.
Right.
And so like even my bag, I always stick something underneath where I have like, maybe I put my jacket, in a dry bag. I put it underneath.
That's why the shelf doesn't make sense, because you don't want your weight down low. If that shelf popped out somewhere up here, mid-thoracic or something, then you're like, but again, you can use straps for that. You don't need a metal. You don't need a frame.
It kind of has that old school, load pack, like meat shelf load pack.
Yeah.
That's all it's used for, is packing meat. But it is incorrectly designed, I guess.
I would say that one thing about the initial ascent, and you talked about this a little bit with the Everly stock, is there's certain things that I really like about how the bags come off of the packs. Mm-hmm. And I haven't, like one of the things that we found, both of us found ourselves doing on our hunt with the Stone Glacier situation was the bags aren't as easily removed, and the frame that's left for packing meat and stuff isn't as robust as the frames that we've been using.
Well, and you have your 60-ish pounds of gear with everything, your food and all that. It's all in your bag.
Yeah.
Well, for me to decompress that down and to run quick, like if I wanted to just drop my stuff right now and then take off, the Stone, I'm individually taking out all my stuff, maybe putting it in a dry bag. We got spoiled
with kind of what we know.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean you don't develop a system with the Stone.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing is the more you use a pack, obviously the more you learn the system. You create your own system that works for you. Mm-hmm. And
like I'll show you right now. Yeah. This is a pack that's, and we talk about this on a different podcast, which you'll tune into soon. But this is a base hunting weight pack. It's got everything I just used on this last trip. It's 35 pounds. The rifle is 6 pounds with the scope and the everything. So the total weight of this is 41 pounds with my weapon. That's what my weight I'd be carrying. Then you add your food and water on top of it. So here's the initial ascent pack, and it's wider, not as narrow. It doesn't stick out as far. The Stone, like I said, goes out here and goes up. The initial goes wide, kind of wraps your hips. Mm-hmm. It goes wide.
Yep. And I would say like the Everly stock is a little closer to the Stone. It's wide, but instead of going tall like the Stone, the Everly stock goes wide and then out, back away from the frame.
When it gets further back, out here like this, it's really important how you load it, because you're like you have all that weight sticking further back, and now you're counter leveraged. It's not an optimal way to carry a load.
Yep.
So the way that this stays flat and goes wide and around you, it does seem to be ideal for carrying weight. And you don't have to be as particular about how you load the weight. The other reason you don't have to be as particular is because the frame right here is so stiff, and with the lumbar pad and the hip belt around you, and all that weight right here is fastened to the board. A lot of these more flexible packs, they have just a single stay that's in there, that's internal and kind of in the fabric, and it sort of stiffens, but it's still more or less a fabric bag with some stiffness cross members inside of it to sort of give it some stability. And so when you put a lot of weight, the difference is when you put a lot of weight on this, that weight is kind of attached to the board, and then the board is attached to the hip belt, and a lot of that weight hangs on this board instead of on your shoulders, hangs on this board instead of on your lumbar and your back muscles. And it hangs on the board, and the board hangs on your hip. And so a lot of the weight is down around your waist, on your hips, where instead of on your upper body. And because it wraps and doesn't stick out very far, it never feels top heavy. It doesn't sway around very much. And so if you do put too much weight on one side, this is the thing that blew me away with the initial ascent, is if I put a rifle and a spotter on one side, like way overloaded on one side, and I put it on, I cannot tell that it's not evenly balanced.
Mm-hmm, correct.
It's like the weight just gets distributed over the board.
Yep.
This carbon frame. And so then it just sort of like, I could just throw stuff in or put it in, not ideally, or take water out or a rifle off, and it just puts back on, and you put the pack back on, and it just feels like it's balanced, right? So it has its advantages. I don't like how the bag doesn't integrate super tight with the frame. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's just buckled to it. And it's fine when it's loaded. When it's empty, you can kind of tell the bag's kind of all over the place, where the stone is neat and tight and tidy.
Yeah.
So it has its issues. And then sometimes I don't like when I have a loose strap and it's making noise or rubbing on the frame. It's kind of a small nitpick, but you know. But one of the things that my dad and I, when we went up in August, we were hunting elk together. And one of the things that we really did a lot of is when you're elk hunting with a bow, you know, you're ditching your gear and you're taking off after the animal. Well, anytime you take off after an animal, you know, you want to have your pack with you, because if you kill and you're 3 miles back there, you want to break it down and pack out at least a quarter. You don't want to have to come all the way back to grab a backpack and go all the way in. You need a backpack, basically, for day hunting. But I don't want to carry the whole giant bag, especially when we do 10-day excursion type hunts, expedition type hunts. I'd like to have a streamed down version for the backcountry, for the day hunts. And like you were saying with your Eberly stock, you really enjoyed the setup that it has, where the bag comes off. And we'll do that in a future podcast. We'll go into that. I'll show you what the initial ascent does, which is kind of probably my favorite. I was never a load shelf, meat shelf guy. I was always like, throw it into a garbage bag, dump it in your pack kind of person. But that's partly because getting your bags off your backpack frames sucks. And a lot of times I thought that it underperformed and undercarried the load and made you not as versatile. But check this out. So, I mean, if some of you may not have seen it, but this is one of the cool things about it, is I can take the top lid off like this of the pack. It comes off here, and just unbuckle it there. Now I have my top lid off, okay? And like I've said before, everything in my top lid is what I need. It's kind of my necessities, everything that I need, from first aid to fire starting to sterilizing, electric, everything kind of that I don't want to part with is right there. Kill kit. But also everything I want when I go into my tent is here too. Because when I get in my tent, I just want to stick this in a corner. I don't want to take my pack and have to do anything else with it. So top lid comes off, and then then this bag, real quick, Dad and I would go, okay, we got to go. We're going to go chase some elk. I undo these buckles on the side here. There's buckles on this side here. And then on the bottom, there's these straps that come off right there. And then I remove these, the load lifter right here. It comes off like so and like so. And now the bag itself comes off the frame. And you see that? Like, this is my backpack with all my weight and my whole pack. It's like, boom, right there. Now I have just this pack. And when you check it out, so I got my hip belts. You know, I'll have my water bottle on one side. I don't have it on there right now because I put it on my stone because I liked the setup. And right here is just it's kind of like a little mini backpack or day pack setup, right? And so I got little buckles that go to the main bag usually, but instead I got them on here. Okay, I got 3 buckles right here, and you can see how this load shelf opens up onto this frame. And I can do the same thing on this side. I put these buckles on here, right here. And just as an example, I'll stuff some gear in here. So Dad and I would get this thing kind of like so. And let's say that I have a puffy and some rain gear and blah, blah, blah. I can stuff it in here like this and just kind of cinch it down how I like. And usually I wouldn't really leverage that much because I don't need to, because I got this pocket here too.
Yeah.
And so right here, I could throw in, whatever else I had that I wanted, like another jacket. I can throw something in there now and kind of show you. And I would put my rain gear in there. Typically what I would do is, let's say you take this, and this is like my rain gear. I'd put this with the stuff sack that I have. I would put that in there. It's nice and neat. And then I can cinch it down, right? And then here I could stuff a puffy, an extra shirt, some food, some day food, whatever else I wanted. I can stuff into this little pouch here and pull it shut. And then I also have, if I wanted my bow, I could take my bow and I could like buckle it, or anything else I wanted. I can buckle across with these little buckles on the back, right? So I have sort of see how this is like a little day pack setup right here? And all I need is just a few things like a rain jacket, a puffy, and some food for the day, right? Then I would take my top lid, and you're not supposed to do this, but I did it anyway. I would jam it through these are actually not meant to go like this, and the guys over at Initial Ascent don't recommend it because it will tear it, but I shove it down here like this because they're really meant to just rest on top, but I like to shove it all the way through instead of using these buckles. And then I take this and I put my load lifter back through like so, here. And then it only takes me like a minute, right? And then I take this and I'm back to my top lid, and I can buckle my top lid back to my day frame, So like I said, I got my rain gear, I got some puffies, whatever I wanted. I got a little bit of food down there, but then I also have that magic top lid that has all my important stuff in it. It's ready to go. And you can see how I went from that giant expedition style bag to this little archery hunting day pack setup. And I can throw this thing on like so. And my pack is actually still loaded. It's got my sleeping bag and my stove, my teepee, like all my stuff is still in this full bag. The main bag, it's all already pre-packed and done.
Yep, and that's how the Everly stock too. It's like I zip it off, and I have my straps that I can attach stuff to the top lid. And
yeah, I mean, I'll throw this on like so, and I can adjust my load lifters or whatever, however.
And I'll say this is like the stone. It's still like it compacts down nicely and tight.
We'll get to that in a minute, but if you look at this, like now I'm out archery hunting, sneaking through the woods, and I have this stiff frame, almost like the frames you kind of carried when you were a kid with a pack board. I got like this sort of pack board setup, but how the frame's stiff. Well, I just loosen the shoulder straps and I loosen it here and the load lifter so that I don't need the board tight to my back.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a load in there.
Yep.
So I just have the hip belt kind of snug, and then the rest of it's loose, and it doesn't interfere with my ability to climb or maneuver or go through the bushes. But I got this, I don't feel like I'm carrying anything because that frame is so stiff, but it's not stiff to me because it's not strapped to me. And then I go off and I got my bow and I do my hunt, and I really enjoyed this setup. And then, like I said, to get it hooked back up to my main pack takes almost no effort at all, it's another situation, removing the load lifters here on the top, and the top lid again comes off, and you don't have to shove it through on the stitching here like I do, but I like how stiff it holds it. And you know, I ended up most of the days not even unpacking this, because day after day my main camp is just, you know, back at camp, but I just need this little day pack set up. But it's very easy to come back here and, you know, I just can throw this right back on the way that it was. You just set it through here, reattach my load lifters up here, and done. I add my buckles, and there's orange on orange, so for you not to be confused, there's orange right here and there's orange right here, which tells you that, you know, this goes to this. I don't know that, I mean, I already knew that. I don't think I need the color coding, but just in case. So there's 2 buckles on the side that attach the bag. And then this is one of my complaints. I'd like it to be even more integrated. It's fine when the pack is full, but when the pack is empty, I'd actually prefer it to attach to the frame a little more snugly than just separately. Hanging over.
That's I do like with the Everly stock. Even it's done different ways, but it's attached to a zipper. As long as I don't have meat in there, I can attach that bag with the zipper, and then I have my straps from the bag and the frame can do their thing.
Yeah, because this is great. It's fine. Like right now, the pack is full. So anyway, you know, I run this through, and these bottom straps, and my bag is reattached.
Yep.
You know, it's back in business with the main load. And that is really nice. And the same thing is true, like when I was packing caribou or moose, I ditched the bag.
Yeah.
No blood gets on it at all.
Yep.
And you can look at my load shelf bag. It can carry huge quarters. It can carry a lot of load. And my load shelf bag is back. It can do all that work with this main bag being taken off. So the functionality of that with the initial ascent is really nice. And then I'm back to the top lid, you know, being fastened on. And now I'm back to this kind of setup. So I mean, it's hard to say, like, this is hard to leave behind. I really do think it's super functional and really nice, the way that works. And as far as carrying heavy loads, it just carries great. And it's very forgiving in terms of how you load it. Did I load it super comfortable? Did I load it not? Did I balance the load well, or whatever? Now this thing can go as narrow as you want it when you cinch it tight, cinch it across the front. But if you look at the snow collar and stuff, the height of this bag, I asked them to just make it bigger and bigger and bigger. Because the reality is, when we go on these big hunts and I got to throw a raft in here and paddles and all kinds of stuff for an animal, most packs I'd run out of volume. The 7900 is the limit. It's as small as I want to go.
Yeah.
I think this pack is just a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and that's where, like, the Everly stock's not quite as tall. And so, like, instead of sticking my raft inside my pack, I usually just have to stick it underneath my top lid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing about it is, I'm very pleased. All these packs, the Everly stock, this one, they all have they shine in certain ways, in certain areas. And I've said this before, when I'm using my Everly stock, I'm using the initial ascent, I'm going, man, I wish it was like the stone like this. And then when I'm using the stone, I'm like, man, I wish the stone would do what my initial ascent does. And you were doing the same thing as you were using the Stone Glacier. So, But at the end of the day, when I evaluate it at the highest level, what I value the most, I want it to really, I don't want to feel back pain, soreness, hot spots, be tired, be like constantly fighting the load to get it to ride right. And all the packs I feel like when we talk about Everly Stock, Stone, and Initial, all of these packs, you can get them to fit so that they provide that.
Yeah.
But you will need to learn your pack. You will need to learn how to load it and what it needs to be optimal.
Figure out the system for each pack that works for that pack, because they're all going to be different.
And for some hunts, I'm like, oh, I'm taking the Initial. Mm-hmm. On the other hunts, I'm like, oh, the Stone is perfect for this trip. You with the Everly Stock. But the more you get familiar with the pack and your system, the more you can get it dialed. And when you live in it as much as we do, and it's a way of life, you can get pretty good at it. And at some point, you hit a point where you're like, the overall advantages that I feel from this, or the forgiving nature of that, or how well this carries at super heavy loads, makes it my trump card. It makes it my go-to. Mm-hmm. It's the winner for me over the rest. And I still haven't figured that one out, because they all perform. You just got to know they have what they can bring to the table and what they can't bring to the table. But overall, I think for me, the most important thing is that it carries heavy, because that just wears and tears on me over time. And they all carry heavy well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, as I'd say, like the Stone does collapse down very nice and tight,
that's a great
too.
point. This initial ascent, the way the bag doesn't quite, like the Stone.
It doesn't compress.
Well, let me say this. The Stone, whether the buckles are all done up on the Stone or not, the bag is integrated into the frame. Mm-hmm. Like they're kind of one and the same. The downside is it just doesn't come off as easy as the initial ascent does. Yeah. But the initial ascent isn't necessarily integrated. So when the initial ascent is empty and it's just laying there, it's kind of like floppy and got a lot of material. Some of the other packs out there on the market, which I'm not going to name, they do the same thing. And that was kind of always something that bothered me, was a lot of strap and a lot of bag just kind of everywhere. The Stone is very concise and tight.
Yep.
And so you can like just cinch it all tight up to the bag. And so when you go out for the day, you can shrink that thing down from its 7,900 cubic inches. You can cinch it all up so that it feels like it's a little tiny day pack.
That's where the Stone and the Everly Stock for me, there wasn't any difference, because the way that the zipper system works on the Everly Stock, it runs the length of the frame.
Nobody can see your hand.
I know. I talk with my hands. Sorry, people. I talk with my hands.
He's running the camera and he's over there using his hands.
So it runs, I'll do this. So from the bottom of the frame to the top of the frame, the Everly Stock zips up. And so that bag is there, and it's not just loose and floppy.
Yeah.
But I can suck it really, really tight against the frame, and it's like this wide. It's like 2 inches deep.
I'm looking forward to running that Everly Stock and getting my own opinion and seeing how it feels in comparison.
Right.
Because you really don't know until you start using these things, and you might be surprised where you feel like one pack is dominating another, but then when you actually put the paces behind it, you're like, man, this pack should have more. This should be more popular.
Yeah.
But it's not, simply because, it's marketing, advertising, it's getting the word out. It's got a branding image that goes with it or something. And
that's the thing, like running the Stone. I mean, I can see myself running the Stone. I can see myself running the Everly Stock. I haven't tried the Initial much yet.
Yeah.
Little jaunts here and there, but nothing extreme. And it's like, there's not a clear winner.
Yeah, they're different.
They're all different, but they all have their advantages, and they all work well in one category, not so well in another, where the other one shines in that category. And it's like, it's a kind of a coin toss.
It is. And it kind of depends on the hunt and the load for that particular hunt.
Yeah.
But like I said, what I was going to say earlier is the stone is integrated tight to the frame, and my initial ascent is sort of hung on the frame.
Right.
And so when the initial ascent when it's full and the bag is kind of being utilized, it's really easy to work with. It feels clean, tight, and nice. But when the bag is empty, because it doesn't fully integrate into the frame, and it's just a lot of excess bag that kind of flops around. And so that's one of the things I'd like to see changed about the initial ascent. With the stone, there's things I'd like to see changed, like the top lid it needs something different with the way that it is accessed and designed. I think it's, like I said, it's like...
It's digging in Santa's bag.
It's like, where's that thing? And you're cussing it out.
I don't know much Harry Potter, but you mentioned something about Harry Potter.
Like the bag of recruitment or endless whatever. I don't know. The bottomless bag. But anyway, we've kind of rambled on and bounced back and forth, but we're just kind of having a discussion on the backpacks that we've been using recently and the things to look for and what we like and the versatility of each of them. At the end of the day, one of the best ways, and I've said this for years, is to borrow one, get your hands on one, load it, and run with it. I do look forward to trying the Eberly stock because I like external frames, actually.
Yeah.
Especially because of the sort of expedition stuff that we do. And it's not super heavy, and the aluminum is a great design. It's tried and true for a long time. So I'm anxious. Some of the quirks bother me. It's like, come on, Everly stock, come out with these updates and changes.
Right.
With the having just run the 7900 and having run the initial ascent, just back to back to back, I think that the stone is much more picky about loading.
Correct. I do too.
And distribution of weight. But when you got it dialed, it's great.
Yeah.
The initial ascent is much more forgiving. The Eberly stock as well. Load it, misbalance it, whatever. It's going to carry heavy and feel good. The Eberly stock and the initial ascent have some quirky design issues that are being worked out by both companies as they get
with
better
the straps
and better,
and pockets and stuff.
Yeah, integration of the frame, whatever, like different.
Where Stone has that dialed.
It's clean. It's neat.
Yep, looks good.
So yeah, I think it was a great discussion. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you found it useful. If you got more questions, leave them in the comment section of our YouTube channel. We try to listen to all of those. I'd be interested in anybody's opinion who has used any of these packs multiple times. I'm really curious about guys that truly put in a lot of time with one and then put in a lot of time with another. It's not much utility to me when someone says, I've used, for example, the XO for 3 years and it's the best, but they didn't use any other pack.
And I would say
because I would think any of these packs I used, like if I used that for a long time, I would think that you don't know what you're missing if you haven't tried.
Well, I'll say this, and using that pack with 30, 40 pounds, that really lightweight, to exceeding 100 pounds for long periods of time or distances, then let's talk.
I gotta tell you, like when I use the initial ascent and I get stupid heavy, I do not feel any fatigue in my lumbar and my back at all, or my shoulders, or I don't get soreness. I feel like, and I said this probably a while back, the Stone Glacier, I feel like I need a little bit of fitness, like a little bit of muscle prep like I need to condition myself to its use. And then once I've gotten used to it, I have those muscles and like, it's like a dream. But, I feel like with these stiffer frames, you don't really need the muscle conditioning at the same level. You can kind of just throw it on and load it super heavy and after a long hike with a stupid load, you don't have any of that. You don't have the back soreness.
Yep.
That you get fatigued. But the downside again is the stiffness when the loads are lighter. That is a little bit more comfortable to wear, for example, the Stone. But the Stone has a nice bag, and it is neat and clean and organized.
Great load lifters on the shoulders, like all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could just go around in circles forever. But
obviously no clear winner here yet.
They're great bags, all of them. Yep. So anyway, leave us comments. We appreciate all of that. We're just trying to, give you our opinions, raw and honest and real. So, leave us your comments. If you like what we do and you want to support us, if you're interested in an initial ascent pack, you can use the code GRITTY over there and you get a discount. It could save you a little bit of money. If you use the code GRITTY over at Stealthy Nutrition, you can get some great supplements, rifle cover, glassing pad. We mentioned Mountain Ops, Ignite, the different supplements, energy drinks and stuff over there are great.
The new Venture bars, I'm digging them.
Yeah, they have those Venture bars, which are sort of a natural health food bar for backpacking.
The cookie crumble, it's kind of like an Oreo.
Yep. I should mention that. I love that bar. I like Blaze Shots for the road trips and the long drives. They're like a 5-hour energy kind of thing. So every time you use the code GRITTY over at Mountain Ops, that helps us out. We also have a lot of other partners. Seek Outside, Peaks Equipment, both have great shelters. We've been using the prototype. Actually, Peaks doesn't have a shelter on the market yet, but they will soon. And it's legit.
Yeah.
It's a legit product that has been in the works for years. So what I like about Bryce Bishop over at Peaks is they don't put stuff out until they've really run it through the paces. And much to his frustration, he's got Ryan and I saying, sorry, go back to the drawing board. And but what I appreciate is he listens, and they got a great group of people over there working with Peaks. So check them out. Get yourself the headlamp and the gaiters in the meantime. If you don't have that stuff, use the code GRITTY for the trekking poles as well. If you don't have those things. So that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know. Appreciate you. We thank you. And stay gritty.